Well, you wanted to see Russia. Here we go. This is my childhood home. I grew up here. The TV I used to watch. Just messing with you. This is a museum.
To outsiders, Moscow is this cold, kind of evil place with these intimidating sounding names like the Kremlin or the dreaded Lubyanka. But if you're Russian, Moscow is like New York City. This is my wife, Stas. She grew up in Russia before moving to the US to study. We're here to visit our grandma, and in the meantime, we're going to show you around the city and introduce you to the Russia that you don't see on the news, the everyday Russia.
We got lost and we went the wrong direction. We're actually trying to find breakfast, but GPS doesn't work in Moscow, mainly because they're trying to block the drones. So we accidentally went the wrong way.
Yeah, we should have been walking over there. Lucky for us, Moscow is easy to get around.
Moscow Metro is really deep and escalator rides are super long. We've been on this one for a couple minutes now. It's almost over.
The Moscow Metro was built as a monument to the people.
It really feels like you're in a palace when you're here.
Riding around the Moscow subway is one of the best ways to get a feel for the city. The subway is one of the few lasting triumphs of the Soviet Union and a monument to the radical equality promoted by the Communist Party. The last few decades have made Moscow famous for hyper-capitalism. As the Soviet Union collapsed, radical economic programs left the majority of the country's wealth in the hands of a few. If anything, the Moscow Metro can help explain why many Russians have a positive view of the Soviet Union despite its many problems.
Music is super popular in Russian Metro. I was growing up, I remember there was a musician or a band playing almost at every station, if not a couple of them, whether it's violin or a group, a band, just like this one. The thing is, Russians are very musically inclined. I think my mom's generation, Soviet times, every kid was sent to music school and learned how to play piano.
Churchill said it best when he said, "Russia is a riddle wrapped in a mystery, inside an enigma. If you want to peel back the layers, you got to see it for yourself." Today, we're focusing on Moscow's inner ring, which is both emblematic of Russia and its own little world. If you're planning a visit, you should still read mainstream news and official travel advice to help you understand the bigger picture. If you want to learn more about what life is like on the edge of Russia, far away from its wealthiest city, go check out our videos about Dagestan and Kamchatka. The first thing you'll notice about Moscow is the scale. Moscow makes other European cities look and feel tiny. Everywhere you turn, there's a giant, beautiful building, big roads, and busy people. The Moscow River cuts through the heart of the city, and the red square pulses with thousands of Russian tourists hoping to do some shopping.
This is GUM. It's the most iconic shopping center in Russia. Back in Soviet times, this was one of the few places where you can buy foreign products. And now it's one of the few places you can buy Soviet products. It started as just a row of shops, and it existed in one form or another for almost 120 years.
I don't know if I said it's really fancy.
GUM perfectly captures the trajectory of Russian culture as it sheds the weight of communism. Most of the shops are extravagant in a way that only makes sense if you're making up for decades of scarcity under Soviet rule. But the only place people seem to actually buy things from is the Soviet nostalgia gift shop. This place is full of funky, sentimental products that could never be replaced by foreign luxury items.
Bobr.
Yeah.
Do you think Neil would like bear meat or beaver meat?
I think he's more of a bear meat guy.
Bear meat guy? Okay.
Wow.
This is smelly fish, dry smelly fish, more dry smelly fish. We'll take one of each. This is liver cake. It's liver with mayo and carrots, and it's kind of all put together in different layers with some dill on top. But my favorite is селедка под шубой. Yeah, селедка под шубой is my favorite. All good. Basically a layered salad. So on the bottom you have herring, potatoes, eggs, a bunch of other vegetables with lots of mayo, beets on top. It's so delicious. It's like the best salad ever. Ну да, может грамм 200. Да. Спасибо большое. До свидания, все хорошо. И потом сюда. This is Russian lemonade. It's from more of Soviet times, but I also grew up drinking it. We're gonna try 2 different flavors.
So this is the селедка.
Под шубой.
Селедка, it's herring under a fur coat. It's the
Yeah.
finest of Russian cuisine. And pretty good. Kind of potatoey, a lot of mayonnaise. I like the beets. It's like, you wouldn't think that potatoes, herring, and beets
And carrots.
and carrots are a good combo, but it kind of works. It's a little thick though. I think I gotta wash it down. In the Soviet Union, you had to stand in a ration line just to buy basic things. And the GUM was one of the only places where you could get more than that. When Americans talk about the USSR, it's always about the bad. The shortages, the lines, the limits. Those things were real, but millions of people grew up with it, and they still have fond memories of a time when a little less meant a lot more. Still, most Russians you'll meet in Moscow hate the tired old stereotypes of the Soviet Union. If you're our age, the Soviet Union collapsed at the same time as we were born. The Kafkaesque relics of this bygone time are shown off as some kind of joke, tucked away in little basements far from the giant state museums that show off Russia's grand imperial past. The little museums give a great impression of the singularly weird, state-managed consumer aesthetic that defines several generations' childhoods. What's this?
Yes, you know this one, it's kolbok.
And what is kolobok?
Kolbok is a round piece of bread that runs away from grandma and grandpa and travels around the forest. Spoiler alert, it gets eaten at the end.
Oh, that's so sad.
I know, but you know, you can't run away from grandma and grandpa.
Oh,
That's the lesson here. I used to be good at this. I don't know. Excuse me, do we have an appointment? I don't see you in here.
If anything, the most shocking part of all this is how far away the recent past already feels here. Russian parents might have played with these dolls. Their kids have iPads.
It's midnight and we're sneaking out of my parents' house so we can go party.
What's the easiest way to meet locals in Moscow? The same way as almost everywhere else, at a bar. What's the best neighborhood in Moscow to find a bar? Kitaisky Gorod, or Chinatown, has a rough and tumble nightlife that often finds itself spilling out onto the street.
we ended up at Nastoyka. Okay, Nastoyka is a Russian liqueur. Do you want a little rundown of?
Yeah, what are we drinking here?
Okay, so this is pomegranate, cherry, mandarin, black currant. This is cucumber and marinated ginger. It's a big Russian thing. You put it down. So cheers. Yeah. I ended up getting more. I don't know, I kept being like, oh, the beets one, it sounds Russian and cool. And the first girl was like, nah, I recommend something else. And then they ended up asking for one, and when she poured it, she was like, yeah, I know, it looks off, right? We'll see, maybe it's good.
Kind of good. It tastes like beet liquor. Spicy. Okay, this is brown bread Nastoyka. It tastes exactly like brown bread. Brown bread. Pretty fun. Yeah, it's good, but it's. Whew. Whenever I meet Russians, I'm surprised by how much more American they seem than, say, some people you meet in Western Europe. Russians aren't camera shy, and they love to meet foreigners. The drinking culture here is real, but it's not that different from going out in any American city. But fashion is much more important. So it's a really fatty, cold cup. It's like cold, hard bacon. So Moscow and Russia in general is really famous for its drinking culture. But what a lot of people don't know is that there's actually a pretty strong anti-drinking culture too. These are called anti-cafes. And they don't sell alcohol and you don't pay for products. You just pay to spend time here. This concept was created in 2011 and it kind of came out of a real need for a third space for young people because most apartments in Moscow are really small. Going out drinking is expensive and the weather is terrible. So there wasn't really anywhere for young people to spend time together and socialize without spending a lot of money or freezing or cramping into a tiny apartment. And that's why they invented the anti-cafe. Most anti-cafes don't have cute animals in them, but hedgehogs are a lot less camera shy than sober college students trying to play games with their friends. They're also a common backyard animal in Russia, and this way Stas could share a bit of her childhood with me.
Okay, Ginger is our girl. She is actually so adorable. Look at this. You gotta see how she's eating. This was insane. She's like a little munchy monster. Look. It makes sense. When I found hedgehogs when I was little, they were always like in the dirt, you know, where the bugs. Yeah, like where the bugs live. and always at night. Well, it's a warm summer day in Moscow, so we're doing what everyone else is doing here and going to the park.
Moscow is a city that feels like it has something to prove. It's been like that since Peter the Great was so jealous of Western European culture that he moved the capital of Russia to a new European-style city that he named after himself. Now, Moscow is full of big, flashy buildings too. Even the Soviet apartment complexes have the appearance of giant monuments here, unlike the famously ugly ones you'll see everywhere else in Russia. To add to all this, a lot of effort is put into the public spaces. The park is full of hired entertainment, and it feels like the city of Moscow has a healthy budget for optional spending. Just like Saudi Arabia or Norway, Russia is a petrostate and has a lot of oil money to spend how it likes. So everywhere you go in Moscow, life feels a little bit celebratory, except your GPS doesn't work and your Uber might get lost. This is coffee with orange juice, and it's really good. Would have never thought of that.
Interesting. It's funny because I feel like I never thought of mixing them together.
Yeah, it sounds gross, but it's delicious.
Yeah.
The Muscovites aren't without their quirks. Here's a few things you should know if you ever want to visit.
Okay, you see this grass? It's not for walking or sitting on. It's only for looking. If you notice, all these people are being good citizens and they're sitting on the benches or on the fence around. In Russia, grass is just for looking. It's a nice thing, and if you sit on it or walk on it, you're gonna mess it up. So don't do it if you ever come to Russia. I bet you can't even notice right away that this building is under construction. Moscow is always under construction, but the scaffoldings are usually printed with cool little buildings or whatever on them. So it always looks nice. You never feel like you're in construction zone. Russian people love flowers so much. There are flower shops that work 24/7 here. You know, just in case you need to apologize to your girlfriend in the middle of the night.
All jokes aside though, Russians take giving flowers very seriously. If you ever go on a date and you don't have flowers, or it's Women's Day and you didn't buy flowers, expect to be in trouble.
This is Winzavod.
Winzavod used to be an industrial zone. Now it's full of art studios, cafes, and microbreweries. If you dropped an American here without telling them where they were, the only giveaway would be the language, and maybe how clean the streets are.
And we walked and we walked and we walked and we walked and we ran into a brewery. Just like other major cities across the world, they're breweries and they're hipsters. Lots of craft beer.
Before sanctions, things like craft beer were almost always imported. Russians tend to think that the finer things in life are from somewhere else. Maybe that traces back to Peter the Great and his obsession with Western Europe. Either way, post-Soviet globalism has given Russians a taste for foreign goods, and then sanctions pulled the plug. This forced a lot of Russians to figure out how to fill gaps in the industry. And in the last few years, a wave of Russian entrepreneurs have emerged, recreating at home what used to arrive from abroad.
It's kind of crazy. We go to flight, and these are the flight sizes in this brewery. They're not all the way full, but they're about yay high, 0.2 liters. It's like the biggest sampler I've ever seen.
Cheers. Long night ahead of us.
Really?
So this is St. Basils Cathedral. It's the most iconic landmark in all of Russia. When Stalin was the general secretary of the Soviet Union, he was destroying all the religious buildings in Russia, and especially Moscow. But he held back from destroying this one because it's so beautiful. Even though it was already Russia's most iconic landmark, Stalin was so threatened by religious symbols that he had to be begged not to destroy St. Basils Cathedral. The irony is that afterwards, the Russian Orthodox Church became one of the most powerful arms of the Russian state and collaborated with the KGB for decades. Now, both Stalin and the church are upheld by the state as shining examples of the Russian national identity. Like a lot of Russian history, it doesn't always make sense, but it doesn't have to.